The .45 ACP has been dropping hammers since 1911, but there's a lot about this big-bore icon that never makes it past the surface. From outdated myths to modern performance stats, here's what most people don't know about one of America's most trusted fight stoppers. What's up, everyone? This is your boy Sully from Line 45, and today we're breaking down the facts, the fiction and the firepower that's kept the .45 ACP alive for over a century. Before I start, I would really appreciate it if you would push those buttons below. The subscribe button, the notification bell, all of them. This is not necessary, but those little clicks help a brother out. Plus, it pushes me to give you more valuable car-related content on your screen. Now buckle up and let's get back to the video. You hold a 230 grain .45 ACP in your hand, and it feels like history. Not just some random round off the shelf, but the same kind of cartridge that went through 2 world wars, sat in a leather flap holster in the Pacific, and punched holes in steel during match day at Camp Perry. Browning built this cartridge with purpose and paired it with a pistol that became a legend on its own. But the round stands tall even outside the 1911. Whether it's in a modern striker-fired rig, a suppressed PCC, or an old warhorse revolver loaded with moon clips, the .45 ACP brings that low-pressure, big-bore push that shooters trust. It's not about numbers on paper. This round was trusted for decades because it worked. Subsonic by design, but still capable of putting serious mass on target, it stayed in service longer than most handgun cartridges ever dream of. Recoil is firm, but not wild. Accuracy's solid if you do your part. And with modern hollow points and better metallurgy, it still performs right up there with the new kids. Plenty of folks today chase capacity or modularity, but the .45 ACP has kept its place because it balances power with control. If you've ever run drills with one, especially through a steel-heavy course, you get it. But to see why it was even born in the first place, you've got to go back to a country in Southeast Asia where a .38 long Colt came up short when it counted. Let's start there. You don't really understand the .45 ACP until you look at where it came from, and that is in the jungles of the Philippines. U.S. soldiers were up against Moro fighters who didn't just drop after 1 or 2 hits. The Army had issued .38 long Colt revolvers, and those rounds weren't cutting it. They were too light, too slow, and just didn't stop the threat when it counted. Word got back fast. The guys doing the fighting wanted something that hit harder. That led the Ordnance Department to start hunting for a man-stopper. Browning answered with a straight-walled, rimless cartridge that fired a 230-grain slug at around 830 feet per second. It wasn't built for speed. It was built to move mass and carry energy through a fight. And it worked. The cartridge became the backbone of the new semi-auto pistol that would later be adopted as the M1911. Both were designed from the ground up for combat. I've shot plenty of modern calibers, but that slow, heavy .45 still brings a kind of authority you can feel in your hand and on target. It's got roots in real-world lessons. That's what makes it different. By the time World War I came around, the 1911 and its new .45 were ready. Problem was, we didn't have enough pistols. That's when the revolver stepped back in and with a twist. Eventually, the Army realized that it had more bodies than 1911s to hand out. So what do? They call up Colt and Smith & Wesson and say, we need revolvers, but chambered in this new .45 ACP stuff. That's how we got the M1917. Both companies took their big frame revolvers, Colt used the new service, and Smith used their second model hand ejector. Of course, both reworked the cylinders to run rimless .45 ACP. But here's the trick: rimless rounds won't eject properly from a revolver. So they came up with the half-moon clip. 3 rounds per clip, drop 2 clips in and you're loaded. Quick to insert, easy to pull, and now that revolver runs like a champ with the same ammo as your buddy's 1911. I've shot one of those old M1917s, and man, they're smooth. Big heavy guns that tame the .45 well. The trigger's soft, the recoil is slow and straight back, and it's got a kind of presence in the hand. that makes you understand why these stayed in use well into Korea. These weren't just thrown together to fill a gap. They were solid sidearms. Even without the clips, you can single-load .45 ACP and fire, though you'll be picking brass out one at a time. Not ideal, but it works. They didn't just solve a logistics problem. They proved the .45 ACP didn't need a semi-auto to shine. That round held its own in a wheel gun, which says a lot. Now, anyone who's actually spent time behind a .45 ACP knows it's not the beast people on forums make it out to be. You touch off a 230-grain hardball in a government-sized 1911, and it doesn't slap you around. It just gives you a solid, straight-back push. It's not sharp like a .357 Magnum in a snub, or snappy like a compact 9mm with Hot Plus P loads. That's because the .45 runs at lower pressure, around 21 soros psi, and that slower-moving heavy bullet creates more of a roll than a jolt. In a steel-framed gun, the weight works in your favor. It soaks up energy, smooths the recoil out, and makes follow-ups feel more like a rhythm than a recovery. I've handed full-size .45s to new shooters, and most are surprised by how easy they are to handle. The myths come from guys who never shot one or tried it in some polymer-framed compact that didn't do the cartridge justice. The grip shape helps too. The 1911's thin, single-stack frame lets you lock your hands in place, and the lower bore axis keeps the muzzle from jumping. If you're used to polymer double stacks, the feel of a .45 in a 1911, or even a modern steel-frame SIG or CZ clone, just makes sense. People chase capacity or speed, but this round is built around control and weight. It's the kind of recoil you can work with, not fight against. Now, if you want to push it further, that's when you get into the real spicy stuff. The .45 ACP has always delivered a reliable heavy hit, but some shooters, myself included, eventually start asking how far it can be pushed. That's where you step into the territory of enhanced variants. They're not gimmicks. They're serious cartridges with real applications, and each one builds off the original .45's groundwork in its own way. The 45 Super is the first step up. It looks like a regular .45 ACP case, but is built stronger and loaded hotter. I've run it through a properly tuned 1911 with a heavy recoil spring and a supported chamber, and it brings 10 mm level energy to the table. You're talking 230 grains moving north of Hals 100 feet per second. It's loud, it's snappy, and it flattens steel faster than standard hardball ever could. Then there's the .460 Roland. That one's no joke. It needs a conversion kit, often with a compensator, because it runs at rifle-level pressures. I've seen it used for hog hunting with 255 grain hard casts going over 1/300 feet per second. It turns your pistol into a backwoods hammer without having to carry a revolver. On the compact side, Glock and Speer teamed up to create the 45 Gap. The idea was to shrink the grip frame, but keep the 45 power. It didn't quite catch fire, but for a while some departments like the Georgia State Patrol issued it. It's a capable round. It just never saw widespread love. And if you're into obscure stuff, the .45 Diatomics Magnum exists too. If you haven't heard about it, then it's a bottlenecked high-speed oddball that proves how far people are willing to push the .45 envelope. Point is the 45 ACP isn't stuck in the past. It's been stretched, sped up, and modernized in more ways than people realize. Let's take the .45 Gap, for example. The .45 Gap, or Glock auto pistol, was introduced in 2003 as a joint project between Glock and Speer. The goal was to create a cartridge that matched the ballistic performance of standard pressure .45 ACP, but in a shorter case. That allowed Glock to build pistols with smaller grip frames similar in size to their 9mm and 40 S&W models. For shooters with smaller hands, or departments trying to streamline training across calibers that sounded like a solid ID on paper, ballistically .45 Gap delivers similar velocity and energy to 230 grain .45 ACP loads, but operates at higher pressure, which is around $23,000 to 25,000 psi. to compensate for the reduced case volume. The shorter overall length meant new guns had to be purpose-built, and Glock answered with the G37, G38, and G39 models. Each one mirrored the dimensions of G17, G19, and G26 frames, but chambered in .45 gap. A few law enforcement agencies like the Georgia State Patrol and South Carolina Highway Patrol adopted it. The idea was appealing, which is .45 power in a 9mm sized gun, but the round struggled to catch on in the broader market. Limited ammo availability, higher cost, and a shrinking selection of firearms made it tough to sustain long-term interest. I've shot a .45 gap in a G37, and while it's perfectly capable, it never really felt like it solved a big problem. Most folks sticking with .45 just kept using ACP, while others went lighter with 9mm. It's a unique footnote in the .45 family. It's still alive, don't get me wrong, but it's already riding in the back seat. Of course, let's not discard the fact that the .45 ACP was practically made for subguns. That slow, heavy bullet just works when you're clearing tight spaces or laying down fire inside 25 yards. The first time I ran a Thompson on a closed range, you could feel the weight of history in every pull. It got a steady climb, smooth recoil and chunk of steel moving with real authority. That gun was built around .45 ACP, and it shows. You're not dealing with over-penetration or deafening muzzle blast like with rifle rounds. It's all close-quarters force delivered fast and clean. The grease gun. It's ugly as sin, but brutally effective. That stamped metal box kept rolling through Korea and even stuck around with tank crews into the 90s. It fed the same .45 hardball, stayed controllable in full auto, and didn't need much to keep it running. Then you get into the more modern stuff. I've shot a Vector in .45, and it's a different kind of beast. The recoil system redirects energy down instead of back, so the muzzle stays flat and on target. It doesn't kick like a MAC-10, and it makes rapid fire feel almost unfair. And that's all with standard 230 grain loads. You look at what these guns were built to do. They're meant for tight hallways, close contact, short bursts, and basically, the .45 ACP just fits. The round's natural subsonic speed also made it perfect for suppression, which rolls us right into one of its biggest advantages. Now ask any seasoned handloader, and they'll tell you, .45 ACP is one of the easiest and most rewarding cartridges to reload. The straight-walled, rimless design makes it smooth to work with on progressive or single-stage presses. Cases are durable and easy to find, especially at the range. Because it runs at relatively low pressure, which is around 21,000 psi brass life, is excellent, and you can usually get multiple reloads out of each case before it needs to be retired. Bullet selection is another perk. You've got a wide range of weights from 155 to 230 grains with plenty of cast lid plated and jacketed options. I've loaded everything from soft-shooting 185 grain match rounds to heavy 230 grain subsonics for suppressed use. The versatility is huge, whether you're tuning loads for a steel match or building a quiet, clean-burning round for a suppressor setup. Powder selection is generous too. Because of the .45's large case volume and low pressure, it tends to be very forgiving during load development. You're not chasing razor-thin margins like you might with a bottlenecked rifle case. And since most .45 loads stay subsonic, it plays well with suppressors right out of the gate. No need to mess with special bullets or powder just to stay under the sound barrier. For folks who like to dial in their shooting experience or shoot in volume without paying retail prices, .45 ACP delivers real value at the bench. Now let's shift to something more battlefield specific, or how this round held up in some of the tightest combat spaces ever faced. Crawling through a tunnel with a 9mm11 in hand is a whole different kind of fight. Guys who did it in Vietnam or those tunnel rats weren't just dealing with darkness and traps. They were dealing with close-quarters combat where every shot had to count. The .45 ACP made sense because it hit hard and didn't overpenetrate. You wanted to stop someone right then and there, not worry about ricochets or running dry with underpowered ammo. That heavy, slow-moving slug gave you the kind of terminal effect you could count on when everything was chaos and inches mattered. But the downside is that the blast was brutal. Firing a full-powered 230-grain load in an enclosed tunnel without ear pro was like setting off a flashbang next to your head. The concussion, the flash, and the noise, they could disorient the shooter just as much as the target. Some guys ditched the 1911 altogether and carried suppressed .22 pistols or revolvers with less flash and noise. I've shot .45 ACP in tight indoor ranges with poor ventilation, and even that's intense. I can only imagine what it felt like underground with zero room to breathe or move. Still, the 1911 stuck with those men for a reason. When it worked hard. And if you had to bet your life on one shot in a crawl space in enemy territory, a big-bore slug from a steel-framed pistol wasn't the worst card to play. Lastly, the .45 ACP wasn't meant for long guns, but that hasn't stopped people from putting it into carbines rifles and even lever-action platforms. One of the more popular examples is the Marlin Camp Carbine 45. It's a blowback-operated semi-auto rifle chambered in .45 ACP that was designed for home defense and woods carry. It feeds from standard 1911 magazines, making it a natural companion to the classic pistol. Lightweight, easy to shoot, and soft on recoil, it gave shooters the ability to stretch the 45 out to 75 to 100 yards with better control and faster follow-up shots. Another route folks go with .45 ACP is in modern pistol-caliber carbines, like the High-Point 4595 TS or the Chris Vector CRB. Both bring the benefits of a rifle-length barrel to the round, increasing velocity slightly and tightening groupings while keeping the recoil flat. In a home defense setup or on the range, that extra stability makes the big, slow .45 a lot more manageable and consistent. You also have lever guns from companies like Taylor's & Co., and even custom builds that pair cowboy style with big-bore auto ammo. It's a niche setup, but surprisingly fun to shoot and plenty capable within the caliber's natural range. As for specialty loads, Y45, ACP rat shot, or snake loads are still produced by companies like CCI. These cartridges use capsules filled with number 9 shot, ideal for close-range pest control in barns or on the trail. They pattern wide and fast, which is perfect for when precision isn't the priority. That kind of versatility is rare, and it shows why the .45 ACP is still relevant well over a century later. I guess to sum it up, you don't carry .45 ACP because it's trendy. You carry it because it's consistent. That 230-grain slug moves slow hits hard and has a century's worth of proof behind it. I've shot it through 1911s, PCCs, even old wheel guns with moon clips, and every time it delivers exactly what it's supposed to. It's not built for high capacity or flashy splits. It's built to end a threat up close without drama. Yeah, it's heavier. Yeah, the guns are thicker. But if your priority is clean, predictable power in a fight, .45 ACP still makes a damn good case for itself.